this short tutorial on Jenkins pipeline. Pipeline as a script using a Blue Ocean plugin. What I plan to do in this short tutorial is let you know how easy it is to kind of build a very complicated pipeline using UI in the newly released, or rather I wouldn't say very newly released, but in the recent Jenkins plugin called as Blue Ocean. Before that, I would also like to get into a little bit about what exactly is a pipeline. What is the use of a pipeline and what is that everyone is so very excited about pipelines in general. And I'll also show you how pipelines were done manually using jobs which were linked in something called as an upstream and downstream job. Later on, how pipeline was written as a code, how you would have to manually go through each steps that is mentioned in the pipeline, find the relevant syntax. The groovy syntax was a little complicated stuff. So you had to spend some time in order to find the appropriate syntax and then include that in your pipeline script. Now all that is passé in the recent UI that has been released. Pipelines can be built in pretty much automated way with a kind of a drag and drop. But before that, let me just quickly let you know what exactly is a pipeline. If you look at the typical DevOps delivery pipeline that everyone is running after these days to kind of build up, the whole tasks that are as of now maybe manually done, but the whole activities which comprise of starting from writing your source code and checking that into your Git repository to building your source code using some build tools like Maven, um, Gradle or any other tools, and then verifying the code from a perspective of running some static code analysis, code coverage, any security scans, um, moving the build across various environments based upon how well the tests were run or how well all the quality metrics that were supposed to have been cleared off for a particular build gets through properly. So the bunch of steps that are supposed to be linked together in a kind of a workflow in order to have a complete DevOps pipeline or complete DevOps delivery pipeline. Now, if all these things can be viewed as individual jobs within Jenkins. So Jenkins is nothing but a very powerful automation server. So for each of these steps or a bunch of these steps can all be visualized as jobs or jobs consisting of stages, multiple stages, add on the complexity of multiple branches involved in the builds, and whatever it takes for one to kind of build a delivery life cycle or delivery process for your application. If you put all these in steps and if you put them in some sort of a workflow, what you typically get is the pipeline. So all these can be accomplished using pipelines in Jenkins. I hope that clarifies what exactly is pipeline in Jenkins. So let me quickly set up a demo showing you how exactly pipelines were done by linking jobs together and then writing some code, and then with the new UI, how easy is it to kind of drag and drop your steps that is required for creating your pipeline. All right, I have my Jenkins server up and running. Let me bring up my UI for logging in. This is my username and credential. I'm running Jenkins on a Windows box. The version of Jenkins that I'm running is 2.2.04.1, a little older version, but this is what I would want. All right, now when we talk about pipelines, I have a bunch of jobs. I have 3 jobs, in fact. This is my first job. The job doesn't really do anything much other than just printing a kind of I'm a first job, right? Echo first job. So I have a bunch of jobs. I have 3 jobs just for the sake of visualization. I have my first job, I have my second job, and then I have my third job. Now, if I were to define a pipeline in the olden times when upstreams and downstream jobs were set up, I would define a pipeline wherein after the first job is successfully run, it will trigger a second job. And after the second job is successfully run, it will trigger a third job. Now to do that, there are multiple ways, but what I'm comfortable doing is I would go ahead and put out a kind of a post-build action. A post-build action is nothing but what would Jenkins do after all these steps, all the build steps and everything runs perfectly fine. So there in that post build action, I define my second job. So after this is the build for my first job. In the first job, if all this goes well, assuming that I have some complicated Maven or Git pulls and Maven build and Maven test and whatever steps that is supposed to be done as a part of my first job, if that successfully happens, then I can trigger off a second job and trigger this only if the build is stable. Now this will ensure that the first job will trigger second job. I have a similar setup for my second job where I've configured second job to trigger my third job. All right, second job triggering my third job. Now this was how pipelines were done prior to Jenkins 2.0. And how would I verify if everything is going on fine? I will just go ahead here and click build now. If you see here, first build is pretty much running. And now as soon as the build is run, second job is gets into the queue. That means second job would run. And after the second job is run, I would have my third job coming up in the queue. And this actually successfully ran my whole pipeline. But then I was not really able to visualize how these jobs were run or what was the output of all these jobs. So to kind of visualize that, I would install a small plugin called I already have it installed, but let me just show that plugin for you. It's called Delivery Pipeline View. Right, this plugin is already installed. So this plugin is a pretty popular plugin, which kind of allows you to visualize upstream and downstream jobs. All right, so I already installed it. Now let me quickly show you how do I put up a nice UI to visualize my pipeline. Now this was what was done once upon a time. So I can give some name for this, my first pipeline. It's a delivery pipeline. I would say okay, and I will just choose one of these options. All these is because of the plugin that I've installed. Enable start of a new pipeline build. Let me click that, and in the pipeline component section, let me again give pipeline demo some new name for my component, and then what is the initial job for my pipeline. This is for just the visualization of my pipeline. So what is my first job? This is my first job, and the last job is optional because the pipeline is powerful enough to pick up which job is linked to which job and run through your complete linking of your jobs. So that's all I'm supposed to say, and there you go. In no time, I have a beautiful view of my pipeline. Now, if you click on this, I can also trigger a new job on this. If you see this now, first job is running, second job will quickly come into the queue. If you see the queues here, but the whole visualization of how these jobs are run is a very, very nice way. It gives you the complete view of the pipeline. So if I want to look at the output of any job, I can click here and I can go into this particular job. Now this was what got people a lot excited. This sounds like a really good thing to do, right? Because you can pretty much visualize your pipeline and you can figure out what is going wrong with your pipeline. You can trigger your pipelines, and there's one nice way of visualization. This was just the beginning of all the excitement. So once this came into picture, a lot of people were very excited about pipelines, and then they started demanding something more. Why pipelines just as visualization stuff? Why only in the UI? Because one part of DevOps, or one of the best practices of DevOps, pretty much means everything as code. So now I put in a lot of configuration in my first job or in my second job and or in my third job, and unfortunately, if I don't pack my Jenkins for whatever reason, if I lose my jobs, I don't have any better way of bringing up my job or kind of getting a backup or getting a restoration of my job that existed along with all the configurations. So as a DevOps practice, everything has code. So why not write pipeline as code? That's wherein Jenkins, the folks at Jenkins, they came up with Jenkins pipeline script. They chose a Groovy because Groovy one of the Jenkins engines is written in, or one of the components of the Jenkins engine is written in Groovy. So they're like, why don't we pick up Groovy as a programming language for writing your pipeline scripts? So typically you create a file called Jenkins file, where you put on all the steps that is required for you to create a pipeline. And this was what was the feature that started getting very popular post Jenkins 2.0. Now, if you look at the actual, what does a pipeline code look like? Is it pretty complicated or not? Not really. It's pretty simple. So if I look at a simple pipeline code, it's nothing but something in Groovy syntax, but it's not very hard to understand. So if I pick up a piece of code here, my first pipeline, all right. So this is as simple as a pipeline code would look. There are two different aspects of writing a pipeline code. One is scripted pipeline, and this is the typical scripted pipeline. But pipeline agent any, if you have multiple agents running, if you don't want to specify any agent, any available agent, and your stages, there are multiple stages that you can define. Each of the stage can consist of steps. But the beauty of this is your whole pipeline that you're developing can be written in programming language, and you get complete access into each of these steps. And if you look here, post is like the typical try catch kind of a block where you can do a lot of these steps, where always means all the time when the pipeline is run, this part of the code will always be hit. Success only if at all the build is successful. The code, I mean the control comes here. Failure is if at all something goes bad. Unstable is you can define a build as unstable. Sometimes it's not that the build is bad, but some of the quality characteristics or quality gate that you set out for your build was not achieved. Some tests might have failed, but that's not a real bad build. A build is a little unstable, right? There's so many aspects of your project, but the beauty of this is you get programming controls into the Jenkins run as and when it's happening, and you can do whatever you want in a pretty much programming language way. Now, this got people very excited. Now, let me just quickly show you how to put up a job with this pipeline syntax. All right, I say new item, I say my scripted pipeline, some name that I want to give for my job, and I choose a pipeline project. I choose a pipeline project, and then I don't really, for now, I don't want to give any source code or any of these things. I just say it's pipeline script, and I just paste this particular stuff here. In case you want some help regarding your pipeline, there's a beautiful syntax generator that is available for you. You can use this in order to get all the help that you want for your actual pipeline steps. But for now, let me just save this and let me just quickly try to run this. This gives you the similar view as what we saw earlier, where all the steps are defined, and then if you look at the output, as of now there's nothing much in this other than all the steps and then the printfs kind of a thing. But in no time I was able to define my complete pipeline in terms of actually our Groovy programming script. And if at all I do not know some steps, how do I write a particular step for any particular activity? Let's say I want to check out a Git repository. Let's say I have another Git repository of mine here. What is it called? Accenture pipeline. I have some repository here. All right. Now there are a couple of batch files here. Compile.bat, deploy, sorry, before that package.bat, and then deploy. Assuming that my pipeline has got 3 steps, and these 3 batch files are supposed to be run as a part of my activity for my Jenkins job. Now, first and foremost, what I got to do is check out this source code from this particular repository. So in case if I have to do that, what I would do is, let's say, let me just show you one step of that. Notepad++, all right. I'm just copying and pasting the syntax that I had here. Now let's say for my first step is actually git check. I can give any name for my step. I can say git checkout. here I'll have to put in a proper syntax. Let's say trying to, I echo something, this is just for debug purposes, trying to check out GitHub source code or source repo, whatever I want to. After this, I would actually try to put in some syntax for checking out my Git repository. But I do not know that syntax. I'm not an expert in Groovy. So what Jenkins gives me is this syntax generator. All right, what is it you want to do? If you look at the URL of this, this is pretty much pertaining to your Jenkins instance. So whatever secrets and other thing that you have used in this Jenkins would all be available for you for trying out in this syntax generator. All right, I want to check out a source code. Now this is Git. What is the repository URL? Maybe I want to check out this repository. What is the URL? I'm going to give an HTTPS URL. This is the HTTPS URL for my repository. Master branch is good for me. Credential, assuming that this fellow um, is a repository which is not a public repository. As of now, it looks like a public repository. That is why it is not picking up some credential. But if I have to give a credential, I can always give a credential in this way. Now, this is my login to my GitHub. What's my password? I hope I remember my password. Right. Now, this gets into my Jenkins secret store, right? And if I say this is what it is, it'll get picked up. I don't want polling, I don't want any changelog, and I would say generate pipeline script. Now this part of the code with all these hash codes and stuff like that, this is the actual step for checking out my GitHub repository. So if I put this here, that's pretty much what I would do as a part of my checkout process. Now let's say my next step is compile. Now I already checked out the source code from my repository. My next step, probably as per my usage, is that I need to run the batch file. I need to run the batch file, which is compile.bat file from the repository that I'm checking out. So what is the syntax for that? I don't know the syntax for that. All right. Now to get the syntax for that, I would just say bat file. Oops, not this one. The bat file is below that. Bat file. What is the name of the bat file? The name of the bat file is compile c capital dot bat. Now I would say compile dot bat. Now generate a pipeline script for this. As simple as this is all that is required in order to run my batch file. Right, I'll just say that I'll put the echo later on. First I'll try to run the batch file. Then if everything goes well, I would echo successfully compiled successfully, some message like this. All right. Now, if my next step is something else, let's say package, right? I would do the same thing, because I know this is what it requires. And instead of this being a compile.bat, it's the package.bat. Okay, package.bat. That's the file. Let me just close this package.bat. Okay, now this is as simple as writing my actual pipeline. Okay, let me just put one more deploy. For now, I'm not doing anything much in my steps. I'm just running them, running some batch files. All right, so this is deploy.bat. Okay, I would say deployed successfully. All right, now if I just copy and paste this particular code is the actual code for, let's say, let me just go and configure this. Let me change this whole thing. Okay, now let me save this and try to build this. Now this would actually do the same steps that I earlier wanted to do, which is checking out this repository from my GitHub repository, and then running the compile.bat first, and then possibly package.bat, and then deploy.bat. All right, now let me see if all of this is going on fine. There you see it's going, hitting the Git repository. It found my Accenture repository, and then it ran. Where is it? Oop, 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 oop. All right, this is the last commit message that I would probably have in my Git repository. All right, create deploy.sh. Right, that's correct. It's hitting my repository. Okay, compiling my project, compile.bat, compiling the project now and date and timestamp. Is that what I have in my repository? In the compile.bat, it looks like that. Yeah, compiling the project and it's printing the date and timestamp. Okay, now it successfully ran all this. It also ran the package and then deploy. Now the whole idea of putting this in a Jenkins file, because the steps that I put out here for now is all right here as a part of my script. Now, what DevOps says as a good practice, I need to copy this whole script. First of all, finding the syntax for this was a little hard. On top of that, I need to copy once I have a working script file. I would copy all this and put this inside my GitHub repository only. Let's say this repository only, so that the source code of my repository is here. Also, the way to build my source code for Jenkins is also there. And I need to put a file with a special name called Jenkins file, J capital. The file name should be exactly that's the default file name. You can put any file name that you want. Okay, Jenkins file. Now this file, which contains all the scripts of my actual pipeline, should also go into my Git repos. That's kind of typical expectation. But this also was a good thing, but managing this was a little hard and finding the syntax was a little hard. That's wherein the new plugin, which is the Blue Ocean plugin, it makes it super simple to do all these steps with the click of a button without really having to worry about the syntax of anything. So trying to get the syntax, trying to remember the syntax, and then putting this on a file with Jenkins file, that was a little cumbersome. Not that it was, people never used to do it. They used to do it, but they used to find it a little cumbersome. That is where you have a new plugin. So let me show you that plugin. I already have that installed. It is the Blue Ocean. Yeah, this is the Blue Ocean aggregator plugin. This is a pretty new plugin that gives you a beautiful visualization for your CI/CD pipeline. Okay, it's a beautiful UI. So I already have that. There are a lot of dependencies for this plugin. It'll take a while for you to install it. I already have that installed. So once I install that plugin, I see this on the left, Open Blue Ocean. So if I click on that, there you go. A beautiful screen opens up, and let me probably create a new pipeline here. All right. So where do you want to store your code? This is what is asking is you're going to create a new pipeline. So where is that you want to put out your source code? Let me go ahead and put out this when I talk about source code, it's nothing but the groovy scripts that we're going to generate out of that, which is nothing but a Jenkins file. So let me go ahead and kind of choose my GitHub server. I already have an API token that I've already created. So this is my username on my GitHub. In case you do not have a token or something, it'll ask you for a token, then it'll take you to the GitHub login page. You're supposed to log in and then create a token. All right, so which repository do I want to actually create my Jenkins file? So let me try to create the Jenkins file right here in this particular project. It's called Accenture Pipeline. So if you see here, it's already got all my repositories. It's actually synced up with my GitHub repository, and it is giving me a list of all my projects or repositories that I have that I want to create a pipeline here in this particular folder. For now, there's nothing here. There's only batch files that is here. Now, what I want to do is I want to create a pipeline. If everything goes well, if the pipeline runs very well, let me create a Jenkins file out of that, and that will directly be committed into this particular repository. All right, don't want this. I would say yes, create a pipeline. All right, so now this is actually going to give me a nice UI. Okay, so get started by creating one. Yes, it is trying to look for if there's an existing Jenkins file here, but there's no Jenkins file here, so I actually want to create it. So start step. All right, what is the name of your stage? If you remember my syntax that I wrote out, everything is a stage. Everything is a stage here, right? There's a stage, stages, and all. So now instead of remembering all this and Actually, if you go bad with the syntax is not any great, but if you miss out few of this, right, editing this and trying to resolve errors out of this is a painful thing. Now, the UI takes care of all that. So what is the first stage? I'll give a name. I will say git checkout, some name for my stage. And what steps do you want? Let me put up a first step. My first step is to check out my Git repository. Git, what is the URL? Now this is the URL of my repository. So let me check out this source code only. All right. And which branch do you want to check out? Let me check out the master branch. Okay. Polling. No, I don't want to do any polling or stuff like that. That's good for me. That's what I'll do. All right. So what is my next step or next stage? If I want, I can at any time go back and then add one more step. Let me add one more step. Let me print a message here. Windows batch script, or let me print a message here. The message is successfully checked out from GitHub. All right. Okay. Now at least one step. Now let me name my stage. This is my second stage. My Git checkout has got two steps in it. First is my git checkout, second one is my print message. Now coming back to my second stage, second one is my compile stage. Okay, compile stage, that is the name of my second step. What is that step that I will add? Let me add a step to this. I would run a batch file. So I would run a batch file. What is the name of my batch file? It is compile.bat, C capital. So compile.bat, that's the name of my file. That's what I want to run. Okay, now after this, let me just print a message. Compiled successfully. All right, that's good for me. And then let me add another step. After I compile this, I am going to package this. So my my stage name is package. And what is the step to this? First one, let me add a step. What is it? It's a batch file. It's going to run a batch file. What is the name of my, did I say script? Yeah, Windows batch script. Okay, it's package.bat, P capital, package.bat. That sounds good. I will just print a message saying packaged successfully. Right, that's what I want in that step. I will add one more stage. I would say deploy. This is the name of my stage. Steps, add a step. Let me run a batch command. It's called d capital deploy bat.bat, deploy.bat, and add on the step, print a message deployed. All right, maybe I'll add one more step. I'll print a message saying super easy to use the Blue Ocean UI for pipeline creation, something like this. As simple as that, as simple as that. All right, now let me go ahead and save this. Okay, if I save this, that means it's actually go and commit it to my GitHub repository. All right, writing the pipeline script using Blue Ocean UI. Okay, let me straight away commit to master branch and then run this particular pipeline. I'm pretty sure that I've not done any mistakes kind of a thing, because most of them are on UI. So that's why I'm trying to straight away check into my GitHub repository as well as kind of run this. All right, if you see here now, it's actually doing whatever we had earlier saw it in the other way. It's checking out from the git revision. Everything looks good. It is trying to run the compile.bat, deploy.bat, and then it's finally printing the messages. And you see all these stages went through very well. pretty simple pipeline creation. And let me look at what exactly happened. And let's see. Hang on. All right. Now, if you see this, it ran just a few seconds ago, and if I look at the status, it's all nice and green. Every step, I can do all. I can just expand this out here. Okay, so this is the part of that particular step that I said. Then compile step, it ran the compile.bat. If you see here, that is the date and timestamp that was there, and then it put out a message. So it's a very nice visualization for my complete pipeline, and whatever steps that otherwise I would have done manually, it's now super easy to read on the UI. And what more, the actual code should have actually gone in, the pipeline code should have gone in and then created a Jenkins file here as well. If you see here, there's a Jenkins file that is created. The step is all right here, created automatically for me. So if I have any complex pipelines, I do not really know the syntax of it, and if at all I feel that it's going to take me a lot of time to come up with the pipeline, scripted pipeline, the UI that I just demonstrated is what you would need. It's a pretty simple one. It gets you up and running in no time, and you can drag and drop most of your components, or at the click of a button you can define your pipeline. The pipeline syntax can get very complicated, but this UI definitely makes it super easy and simple for you to get started. All right, guys, thanks a lot for watching my video, and I hope you found it informative. And as usual, in case you have any questions, kindly leave a message and we'll try to get back as soon as we can. Thanks for your time, and you guys have a great